Everyone thinks Wednesday Addams is just a quirky little goth girl with dead eyes and a cello. On the surface, she is. But what if I told you her roots are older than television, even older than America? Wednesday Addams is the resurrection of something far more ancient, a forgotten archetype born from death cults, mourning rituals, and the darkest feminine myth in history. They called her omen, witch, widow, goddess. Now they just call her Wednesday. To understand Wednesday, you have to trace her lineage, not just through Gothic fiction, but mythology itself. And we'll get there. But first, we need to start at her modern beginning. If you want to know who Wednesday is, we need to step into the mind and meet the man who gave her life by surrounding her with death. In 1938, a cartoonist mailed a sketch to the New Yorker. A Victorian mansion, cracked and looming. Inside, a pale woman and her hulking butler pouring boiling oil on Christmas carolers. The magazine ran it without captions and names. That's where the Addams family started. Charles Addams submitted over 1,300 cartoons to the New Yorker over 5 decades. Roughly 60 of them featured the unnamed family that would later become Morticia, Gomez, Wednesday, and the rest. He didn't have an origin story or lore, but he had a family that gardened nightshade, kept piranhas, and fed mailmen to pet lions. Addams didn't pitch a concept. He just kept sending in panels, and the editors kept printing them. The characters only got names when the TV adaptation was developed in the 1960s. Addams himself lived in Westfield, New Jersey, in a house that looked like it was drawn by him, tall, gabled, with a wrought iron fence and a history of deaths on the property. He collected suits of armor, owned crossbows, drove a Bentley hearse. His apartment in Manhattan had a rack of medieval weapons on the wall and a table made from a coffin lid. He was obsessed with cemeteries, not symbolically, but architecturally. He sketched actual mausoleums, studied crypt layouts, and often walked Llewellyn Park Cemetery, a site with elaborate tomb designs. In interviews, he admitted he was fascinated by what people didn't say about death. He didn't see the Addams family as scary. He saw them as functional. They were deeply loyal, affectionate, comfortable with mortality. They just did everything backwards, which made them feel honest. The real satire wasn't about monsters, it was about suburbia. He once said, "Normal is an illusion. What's normal for the spider is chaos for the fly." He diffused fear with humor. Charles Addams died in 1988. After he died, his widow T. Addams honored his legacy in a way that matched his macabre sense of humor. She placed a plaque in the pet cemetery, which is actually not his real burial site, but a symbolic memorial that reads, "Charles Addams and family. Their spirit lives on." This plaque is not a traditional gravestone, but a tongue-in-cheek tribute in a pet cemetery, in true Addams style, mixing morbidity with dark humor. His actual remains is not known publicly. Instead, this plaque has become the unofficial Addams Family Memorial. Charles Addams built lives with no pulse, and he knew where to find beauty. He looked for it in mausoleums, in the angles of marble, in the calm of cemeteries no one visited. He once traced the outline of a crypt to use as a doorway. The doormat didn't say, "Welcome." It said nothing. And that was the point. He didn't exaggerate. He reported. The jokes worked because the silence already existed. The art felt haunted because it was. There was no tragedy in his world, just tradition. Every laugh carried embalming fluid. Every wall sconce flickered like a seance. And in the corner, always watching, was the girl. So, where did the name Wednesday come from? Wednesday Addams wasn't randomly named after a weekday. She was named after a rhyme. In the 19th century, British parents recited a rhyme to predict what kind of child they'd raised. The nursery rhyme is called Monday's Child, used to predict a child's fate based on their birthday. It was superstition, a forecast of your fate, and Wednesday's fate, the worst one. The rhyme goes like this.
Monday's child is fair of face, Tuesday's child is full of grace, Wednesday's child is full of woe.
Thursday's child has far to go. Friday's child is loving and giving. Saturday's child works hard for a living. But the child that is born on the Sabbath day is bonny and blithe and good and gay. Everyone else got charm, ambition, generosity. Wednesday got grief, sorrow, woe. The kind of pain that lingers long after the reason for it is gone. It was the only line in the entire rhyme that didn't describe behavior. It described a condition, a weight, something baked into the bones. It's one of the only character names in pop culture that comes preloaded with a prophecy. The name was cemented in 1964 when the Addams Family TV show needed names for the nameless characters from his original cartoons. A producer reached for the Old English nursery rhyme, and Wednesday was born. So, Charles Addams didn't invent her name, but when the show's producer suggested it, he approved it instantly. Do you know what weekday you were born on? Which one would you be? Let me know in the comments. This video took a lot to make. Research, visuals, and more candles than I'd like to admit. So, if it made you feel something, anything, please leave a like. It genuinely helps the channel and lets me keep making things this weird. In the 1800s, death wasn't as taboo like it is today. It was scheduled, dressed, framed. There were rules. There were timelines. There were entire manuals on how to grieve. If your husband died, you wore black for 2 years. If your child died, it could be longer. Mourning was a public performance. Fabrics changed. Jewelry changed. Social behavior changed. Even conversation had to shift. Death didn't pause life. It replaced it. For women, grief became uniform. Jet black dresses, veils over the face, gloves to cover the hands. The body became a walking altar, not to the person who died, but to the person left behind. In some families, they'd take all the curtains down and replace them with black crepe. Clocks were stopped at the hour of death. Mirrors were covered. Silence was part of grief. It was expected. And then there were the photographs. Children, mostly, dressed in their finest clothes, laid out in chairs or in beds or in the arms of mothers who never blinked. The camera didn't capture life. It captured proof that life had ended. Eyes were sometimes painted open on the print. Bodies propped upright with iron braces. The images exist. They're real, and they're hard to look at, so we won't show the real ones, just recreations. But just know, when you see a girl like Wednesday, you're seeing the creation of that tradition. To the viewer, it looked like a portrait. To the family, it was the last image they'd ever have. These were rituals. Death was used as something to remember correctly. You want to understand Wednesday Addams. Look at one of those photographs. Pale skin, pressed posture, hands folded or clenched, clothes too formal for a child, a calm that shouldn't be there. Wednesday is Gothic, but she might be even more historical than we thought. Her entire look is modeled after a real aesthetic of grief. one society tried to bury with the bodies. She doesn't wear black because it's edgy or for a fashion statement. She wears it because for centuries it was law. It was a sentence. And some girls never took it off. Wednesday Addams is a Victorian death doll kept alive by irony. A child designed like a funeral portrait. A girl you weren't supposed to laugh at, but somehow always did. There's always been a girl like this, pale, still, quiet enough to be unsettling. She doesn't scream, she watches. Edgar Allan Poe didn't write about love. He wrote about obsession. Lenore, Ligeia, Madeline Usher. Dead girls, dying girls, girls you couldn't forget, even if you tried. Poe was haunted by the idea that beauty couldn't last. And so every girl he created had to be on death's door or already there to be remembered. Mary Shelley gave the world Frankenstein. But before that, she gave us herself, a woman surrounded by death. Her mother didn't make it out alive while giving birth to her. 3 of her own children didn't make it past infancy. Her husband ended up losing his life from drowning, but at this point in her life, she had already lost 1 child. That grief directly influenced Frankenstein. So when she wrote Frankenstein, she was living and walking in horror. Frankenstein wasn't about a monster. It was about what happens when we try to steal power that was never ours, the power to create life. And that story was written by a teenage girl during a storm in the ruins of a failed utopia. Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein when she was just 18 years old, during a stormy summer in 1816 at Lake Geneva, Switzerland. She was staying at Villa Diodati with Percy Shelley, Lord Byron, and others. The place was haunted by bad weather thanks to a volcanic eruption that year, and they challenged each other to write ghost stories. So that utopia of enlightened, perfect society. It failed, and that tension between idealism and horror, progress and grief, is exactly what Frankenstein is about. If you want a dedicated video on her work and Frankenstein, let me know.
Now, my creation, behold the world I have given you.
Wednesday sits in that lineage, a daughter of the Gothic, a girl shaped not by trauma, but by comfort inside it. Wednesday, likewise, isn't reacting to horror. She commands it. She's both the observer and the orchestrator. She doesn't flinch at the macabre. She intellectualizes it, like Shelley did with mortality and science. Wednesday and Mary were both teenage girls surrounded by chaos. Both Frankenstein and Wednesday are built from mourning and discomfort. Frankenstein is a stitched-together corpse, animated by obsession. Wednesday is a living elegy, a girl who wears death like perfume. Mary Shelley's Gothic influence shaped the entire aesthetic that later birthed Wednesday's world, the obsession with anatomy, decay, lightning, and taboo. Women wielding power through knowledge, death as an aesthetic, not a tragedy. Charles Addams was visually channeling that same morbid curiosity, and in many ways, Wednesday is the literary great-granddaughter of Shelley's worldview. But she's also something even older, 4,000 years older. Before Eve, there was Lilith. Her story doesn't begin in Eden. It begins in ancient myth. She first appeared as Lilitu, a Sumerian wind spirit, haunting deserts, stirring night air, whispering through cracks in the veil. By the time she enters Jewish Midrash, she's no longer just a spirit. She's the first woman, made from the same earth as Adam. Not his rib, not his possession, his equal. But equality didn't mean obedience. When Adam demanded submission, Lilith said no. When he wouldn't listen, she invoked the sacred name of God and left the Garden of Eden by choice. she walked out, and that was the beginning of the punishment. Angels were sent to bring her back. She refused, so they called her dangerous, labeled her wicked, branded her a demon, the mother of monsters. She is remembered as the first woman who said no. Now look at Wednesday. Where Lilith chose exile, Wednesday chooses isolation. Where Lilith was demonized, Wednesday is dismissed as weird. But the root is the same, a girl who refuses to conform. Lilith left paradise to build her own domain. Wednesday leaves normalcy to write her own rules. They are daughters of defiance, symbols of autonomy wrapped in gloom. And when they look back at the world that shunned them, they don't beg for mercy. They walk away while it all burns down behind them. Then there's Hecate, the Greek goddess of magic, witchcraft, ghosts, necromancy, and the night, associated with thresholds, literal and spiritual. She governs crossroads, doorways, graveyards, and liminal states, birth, death, and transformation. She often shows up in triple form: the maiden, youth, intuition, beginnings; the mother, maturity, power, manifestation; and the crone, wisdom, death, endings. She isn't evil. She isn't dark for shock. She's sacred to those who walk between. She's a protector of outcasts and witches. Wednesday is that same figure, reimagined. She isn't dangerous because she lashes out. She's dangerous because she understands what most people bury: grief, silence, revenge. Hecate held torches in the in-between. Wednesday lights candles in crypts. Hecate led the dead to their rest. Wednesday befriends them. Hecate's power was knowledge of the liminal. Wednesday's power is comfort in that liminal. They don't demand power. They are power because they exist outside the rules. Girls who don't flinch when the veil gets thin. And Wednesday? She walks the same edge. Of Hecate's three faces, Wednesday is the maiden, but not the innocent kind. She's the girl at the start of power, the one who knows before she's supposed to. Still young, but already ancient. They're both feared for what they know. The dark feminine archetype, a girl who doesn't need saving because she already lives in the underworld. Wednesday isn't what happens after a tragedy. She's what rises from it, like lightning in a Gothic lab. Stripped of metaphor, dressed in uniform, written in sarcasm. She's a continuation, a lineage, not a gimmick. You don't put Wednesday in a cheerleading uniform unless you want to watch the blood hit the pom-poms, because she's not there to perform. She's there to haunt the choreography. She's not misunderstood. She's precisely what you see, and that's why it works. In mythology, there's always a girl who walks with death. She appears in different names, different dresses, sometimes with wings, sometimes with a torch, but always with death by her side. Wednesday is that girl, just rebranded for the 21st century. But the eyes, the posture, the pause before she speaks. Ancient. This is more than a Netflix Tim Burton show. It's about the return of a shape we've been trained to ignore. For decades, we praised the girl who smiled through it, who played nice, who kept it together. The good daughter template got handed down like a curse. And then came a girl who didn't play by the rules. No pastel, no apology, just black on black. A stare like a closed door, and no explanation. This archetype has been resurfacing through horror, through anti-heroines, through myth reboots in lipstick and leather. Pop culture keeps handing the mic to women who don't flinch, don't beg, and don't break the way they're supposed to. So, why now? Because performance is exhausting. Because grief doesn't care about your aesthetic. Because we're surrounded by spectacle and fed on chaos, and silence is starting to look like power again. The loudest character in the room is the one who says the least. Wednesday doesn't chase attention. She attracts it like a black hole. She's not quirky. She's ritual. She's not trendy. She's timeless. And she has always been here. Let me know who plays your favorite version of Wednesday. And if you're still here, you're my kind of strange. So hit that subscribe button to become a mystic seeker. There's more weird coming up. Thanks for watching.